In this video, I'll give you my final picks for UFC 299. This will be Draftkings strategy, lineup construction, everything you need to do to be successful on this slate. You can call me Kunath. Let's make some money this week. We decided to wait till after the weigh-ins to record this just to make sure that all the fights were going to happen. CJ Vergara missed weight by only a pound. We knew that though. But now we can look at our value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below on Draftkings, your underdogs that you're going to need to make your lineups work. And we start right at the top of the range at $8,000 Jailton Almeida. And you know how I feel about him if you've watched the predictions video from earlier in the week. And if you haven't, go back and watch that. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. That is a full card breakdown. We go into these matchups in much greater detail than this video. But Jailton Almeida is somebody you're going to need in your player pool. You're going to want some exposure to him because he's at the right price. It happens time and time again where this 8,000, 8,200 range, a very closely lined fight, the fighter shows up in the optimal lineup. And it's especially important to get that fight right when it comes to your single entry contest. You're going to have plenty of people on one side, plenty of people on the other, so you want to be on the correct side of it, and salary wise it just makes sense. But when you look at Jailton Almeida, he has access to the highest scoring ceiling possibly on the slate outside of the 5-round fights, and even maybe if you consider the 5-round fights, because this guy has put up 135, 104, 125, 121, 114, 118 in the UFC. So based on the run that he's been on, worst case scenario, you're going to get north of 100 Draftkings points. Jailton Almeida, somebody you need in your lineups. Now, if you've watched the predictions video, you know that I don't think he's going to win. I think that Curtis Blaydes has more ways to win this fight. I think he has better striking. I think he has better wrestling overall, and I think he's going to find ways to beat Jailton Almeida and probably finish him in the first round. But just because we think one thing is going to happen, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So you need to lean on process more than whatever you think the result is. So in this case, the process is play a little bit of Jailton Almeida, play a little bit of Curtis Blaydes, and you'll be just fine. The next value play is Felipe Lins, who was on weight this week. He came in a little bit later, but he was on weight, and of course he looked jacked. Felipe Lins down at light heavyweight has looked shredded, and he's 3-0 in that weight class. He beat Marcin Prachnio, he beat OSP, he beat Maxim Grishin. When he first came into the UFC, he was built like a flopper, and as a result was losing these fights. Clearly light heavyweight suits his frame better, but I want you to approach this one with caution. Nobody pulls out of a fight quite like Felipe Lins does, and just because he made weight and just because the fights are tomorrow doesn't mean that he's not going to pull out. So if you're only a single entry contest kind of player, you might want to avoid putting all of your eggs in this flimsy Felipe basket. But if you're running multiple lineups, you're playing in a 3 max contest, 20 max, 150 max, whatever it is, I would recommend being overweight to the field on Felipe Lins for this reason and this reason only. You're not really playing Felipe Lins, you're more so playing what happens when Ion Cutelaba loses. A couple weeks ago at UFC Mexico City, we talked about this with Daniel Lacerda. Whoever Daniel Lacerda fights, optimal lineup. And the reason for that is because he's always getting finished. Ion Cutelaba has been finished in almost every UFC loss, and we could just go through this. Second round knockout to Kennedy and Nzechukwu. First round submission loss to Johnny Walker. First round submission loss to Ryan Spann. Mind you, look at the salaries tied to this guy. He gets a lot of respect from Vegas. He tends to be favored for what his potential looks like, I believe, but you got to think, if he's 8,900, 8,600, that means that Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann, even Kennedy and Nzechukwu, if I had to guess, were pretty cheap. Like for example, at 8,600, that made Johnny Walker 7,600. So you got Johnny Walker winning in the first round down at 7,600. Back-to-back first round knockout losses to Magomed Ankalaev. I know the one was a botched decision by the referee, but the second one was very clear. Second round submission loss to Glover Teixeira. Third round submission loss to Misha Serkinov. So you see the trend here. If Ion Cutelaba's giving it up, he's letting you score 90 plus Draftkings points every time. And that builds value into Felipe Lins as a Draftkings play this week. Again, beware of him pulling out last minute. You're going to get that shot that you hate seeing of the commentary team. You're going to see John Anik say something like, we got news that Felipe Lins is not medically cleared to compete today. Yeah, we got this news at 9:30 a.m. this morning, but we wanted to wait until the event started to let you know. But if he's a go, he's somebody who you should have in your player pool this week. Again, try to be overweight to Felipe Lins. And if you don't know what that means, it's take his projected ownership. So if it's 30% and you're running 10 lineups, maybe have him in 4 lineups. That way you're at 40%. If the field's at 30%, then you're 10% overweight. And if he wins, that puts you in a better position than most people based on the projection. Now we take a short walk down to $7,900 Song Yadong, who's fighting Petr Yan this week. Somebody that you want to have in value play consideration, but not somebody I'm dying to play this week. This is the opposite situation of Jailton Almeida, where I do have Song Yadong winning, but he's not somebody that I want to play because of what that scoring ceiling looks like in a 3-round fight against a very tough Petr Yan. We look at the way that Song Yadong has scored in the past: 107, 104. These are in 5-round fights. Against Marlon Moraes, he scores 106, but that's a first round knockout. What we want to look at is how he's scoring in fights fights that he's not finishing over 3 rounds. That's Casey Kenny at 78. That's Chito Vera at 76. 78 points against Morales in his 3rd UFC fight. So you're noticing that he's not getting a whole lot of takedowns. If he's not knocking you down and knocking you out, that scoring ceiling is very low. When was the last time we saw somebody go out there, run through Petr Yan that wasn't Merab? I don't think he's going to get knockdowns. I don't think he's going to get takedowns. If he does get a knockdown, I don't think that he finishes Petr Yan. So I think he's looking at around an 85 point DraftKings day, and that's just not enough. Personally, I only have him projected for 86 DraftKings points, and I don't think that's going to cut it for you this week on a 14 fight card, especially not one where there's so many viable dogs. So he's somebody that I wanted to talk about. If you do have him in your value plays, that's cool. Just make sure that you're underweight to him because he could end up burning you. And I have a few more value plays to go through, but before I do, let me know in the comments which underdogs you think are going to win this week. 2 underdogs. Give me 2 of them. Dos. If you could successfully call 2 underdogs, I will shout you out in next week's video. Here were the sharp people in the comments from last week. Kira Lucio, however you say it. They had Biggie Boy and Ayman Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi was the parlay buster. I felt the brunt of that Ayman Zahabi force just like most of you did. Michael had Loic Razgabov and Ayman Zahabi as well. Very well done. And 2 people that are very active in the comments section, CJ Nick and Danielle Brooks, both went with Biggie Boy and Loic Razgabov. Very sharp. I didn't think that Biggie Boy was going to be able to handle that pressure, but he handled it like a champ. So shout out to all of them. If you want to be shouted out in next week's video, you can do the same, and you'll also get some free merch. I'm talking headbands, hoodies, stickers for your welding hat, because I know there's some welders out there. All the things that you... What, is there still no merch? God damn it, Oscar. What do you do? Maybe pause on the merch. Moving on to our next value play, we got Gilbert Burns at 7,600. He should get a decent amount of ownership. He should be somebody who's a popular underdog this week because the skill set is there and the path to victory to beat Jack Della Maddalena is so clear. I think on the feet, Burns really struggles here. I think Jack Della Maddalena touches him up with that clean boxing, rips him up to the body. Even when Burns lands one of those powerful hooks of his own, I think that JDM's just going to eat it. But we've seen Jack Della Maddalena put in very bad positions 3 times in the last couple of years, positions that Gilbert Burns finds you in, it's over. We saw Anjos lock up an arm triangle against him. We saw Ramazan Ameev almost finish him with a Darce. We saw Basil Hafez nearly finish him with an arm triangle. And all those guys are worlds below Durinho when it comes to the grappling. So I think that if Gilbert Burns can get this fight to the ground, I think it's a wrap. And I also think that Jack Della Maddalena has a strange confidence in his ground game, and it's not that great. We saw against Basil Hafez, he kept jumping guillotine. It was almost like he was inviting the takedown, like, oh yeah, I got the ground game to take care of this. No, you don't. Somebody like Burns gets on top of him, starts sinking in that arm triangle. He's not just going to be able to gut it out. It's going to get on the blood. He's going to get choked out. He's going to tap. Now, I still have Jack Della Maddalena to win. I think he's going to keep the range. I think he's going to be able to paw with that long jab. And I think he's going to hurt Burns at a couple of different points in this fight and probably win a decision or win by knockout. But when you consider the salary, I would suggest having more Gilbert Burns this week than you have Jack Della Maddalena if you're running multiple lineups. And the reason for that is because I think the scoring ceiling for the other fighters that are favorites are way higher than JDM's, while I think that Gilbert Burns is one of the more live dogs on the card. Now, our next value play is the Diamond, and I think that he wins here. 7,300, somebody who's got 5 rounds to work. You've seen how he scores in 5-round fights before. Against Max Holloway, he scored 113. Against Dan Hooker, he scored 112. 4th round finish over Justin Gaethje puts him at 111. When you go through the roster, it's hard to find anybody that goes to war the way that Dustin Poirier does. I think having 5 rounds here gives him a huge advantage over having a 3-round fight against Benoit Saint-Denis, because Benoit Saint-Denis can keep that pace up for close to 15 minutes. But it's when you start to get in the 4th round and the 5th round where Dustin Poirier is fighting the same way he was in the first 5 minutes, that's when guys are going to have some serious trouble, and I think that's where Benoit Saint-Denis gets finished. We saw what he looked like against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, and I know that people say, oh, that was up a weight class at welterweight. This guy was fighting at welterweight up until that point. I think that fight is the reason that he dropped down to lightweight. He's probably thinking these guys are a little bit too big. If I can't take you down and I get stuck on the feet, I'm going to have trouble. And he seems like one of those tweeners where if they do open a 165 division, Benoit Saint-Denis is probably right there. Even during the stare downs, you see that Benoit Saint-Denis is a bit bigger than the Diamond, but what I expect from Poirier is the following. Hard low kicks, making him pay for when he overextends, keeping a low stance so that he doesn't get taken down, and he just keeps moving, just keeps working when he does get pressed up against the fence. sense. He's also giving him a different look than what he's seen fighting out of southpaw, and he's not these other guys that Benoit Saint-Denis has ran through. When you look at these guys, you take Matt Frevola, for example. He knocked out Matt Frevola with a kick that is basically routine. The kick itself was cool, but Matt Frevola getting hit by the kick is what blew my mind. That was something that you've seen thousands of times before, where there's a break, somebody throws up a head kick, and the guy's moving back, just slides out of the way. Matt Frevola's not even looking at him. Let's say you on the camera as Benoit Saint-Denis. Matt Frevola's looking here as he's moving back. What is he looking at? I don't know. Thiago Moises, he just bullied him, and even then, Thiago Moises was catching him with hooks in the pocket over and over again, but Thiago Moises, not too much power in los manos. Ishmael Bonfim, the jury's still out. He beats up on Terrence McKinney, which happens about 50% of the time at this point, and did nothing to address the body kicks that Benoit Saint-Denis was throwing his way. He didn't crowd him, he didn't move out of range, he was just eating them. I don't even know where Gabriel Miranda's at, I don't even know where Stoltz is at, so you look at these guys, I mean, they are way below Dustin Poirier's level. Even Dos Santos is way below Poirier's level. So this is a huge step up in competition against one of the toughest guys in the UFC ever. This guy is used to finishing these fights. He's in a 5-round environment. Dustin Poirier at 7,300 looks like money in the bank. Definitely want to have exposure to him this week. One of my favorite underdog plays in the entire slate. The next value play that we're looking at is $7,200 JoJo Wood, because she has scored well in decisions in the past. Last time out, she put up 105. You see against Jessica Ai, she put up 108. 96 against Andrea Lee. 89 against Lipsky. 138 against Casey. So you're seeing a situation where even in a decision, she's scoring a lot of points. Now you can look at the losses. Grasso's the champion, no shame in that. Talia Santos could have been the champion, no shame in that. Lauren Murphy is as sturdy as a brick building, so it's hard to get through that as well. But again, Carolina, Jessica Ai, you start to fight fighters kind of at your level, at this Marina Moreau's level, and she starts scoring very well because the volume is high. She can get takedowns if she wants to. She's good in the clinch, and all of that activity results in a good DraftKings score. She's going to be way lower owned than she should, definitely under owned this week, probably somebody who comes in south of 22%. That's what we ever projected at least, and sneaky down at her price of 7,200. So don't sleep on JoJo Wood. She could certainly get it done this week in one of the better value plays that I can see. And our last value play is the champion to be Marlon Chito Vera, and new. We just have advantages here. We have advantages in toughness, we have advantages in kicking, we have advantages in grappling. He's not going to use the grappling much, but if he needs to, he can. But he's going to kick the shit out of those Sean O'Malley legs, I can promise you that. And it's shocking to me that people will just buy the idea that Sean O'Malley didn't really lose that fight, as if it was some fluke freak injury thing. Oh, he injured his leg, that's why he wasn't able to happen. Why did he injure his leg? Because Chito kicked him, that's why. He could do it again. He can kick him in the same spot, and he's got 25 minutes to do it. These guys who win the belt, I'm telling you now, they don't hang on to it. It's very hard to climb that mountain, make that money, get that fame, get that notoriety, and then keep that up. It only gets harder once you become the champion. And you have somebody in Marlon Vera who is all-time durable at 135 pounds, and I keep seeing people say Sean O'Malley knocks him out in 1 or 2 rounds. What would make you think that happens? Because he knocked out guys like Eddie Wineland and Thomas Almeida and Hallie and Paiva, just a laundry list of guys that no longer fight in the UFC. But this is what we talk about. This is what we talked about earlier in the year with the title fight video. And if you don't know what I mean, look for it on the channel. It should be 40% more, make 40% more betting on UFC fights. The thumbnail will say the truth. To win the belt, you have to be an amazing fighter. But when guys win the belt, it's immediately shooting them into this status that they are way better than they were before they won the belt. I don't know if that's the case, and at 135 pounds, I don't think it's a matter of one guy being so much better than the others. Bantamweight has been one of the most competitive divisions for the last decade. You've got Henan Barao, he gets knocked off by TJ Dillashaw, who gets knocked off by Dominic Cruz, who gets knocked off by Cody Garbrandt, who gets knocked off by TJ Dillashaw. Jose Aldo starts getting in the mix. Petr Yan becomes champion. Aljo becomes champion. You've got Aljo in these super close fights after winning the belt. And one of the more definitive title fights, one with more finality, was that last fight with Sugar Sean O'Malley and Aljamain Sterling. And I say that to say this. Sean O'Malley was a big underdog against Aljamain Sterling, so it was a shock when that happened to most people. We had Sugar Sean O'Malley for this reason. Styles make fights. Sean O'Malley has a terrible style for Aljamain Sterling. Sterling has been knocked out. He's not the most durable guy in the world, and his hands aren't great. His grappling is second to none at 135 pounds. He has very good kicks as well, but from a boxing standpoint, his hands aren't that great. Sugar Sean O'Malley has some of the best hands in the division and was able to catch him, and we saw that. We knew that. But I think there are plenty of guys that would give Sean O'Malley trouble at 135 pounds. I think that Corey Sandhagen would give give him all types of trouble. I think Song Yadong would give him trouble. Petr Yan already gave him the business. Vera already gave him the business. But, and this might be controversial, I think that Sean O'Malley would beat Merab. I think he'd snipe him. I think he would catch him. I also think that Merab would eat Vera's lunch. So I know we went off the rails a little bit, but I just say all that to say this. I think 135 pounds is just a shark tank where anybody can rise to the occasion at any time. Marlon Vera has the style that can give Sean O'Malley tons of problems, and I think over 5 rounds at 7,000, he needs to be in your value play consideration. He can blow up the slate. And those are our value plays for the week. We're going to use them to build some of the lineups, starting with cash game lineups. But before we do, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. And if you want to go a step further, share this with somebody you know is going to be watching the fights this week. All free ways to support the channel, and it's good luck. Now for your cash games, I think we have a very stackable main event this week. I don't think that either guy is going to get finished early enough for it to not be stackable. So we're going to put Sean O'Malley in there. We're going to put Vera in there. We're going to punt as well with some of these lower cost options. CJ Vergara at 6,700 stands out despite the slight weight miss. That's just what he does. CJ is the only fighter on the roster that fights at 127 pounds. He's got his own division. He technically would be the champion of that division. When you're the only fighter in that weight class, you are the champion. That's why Amanda Nunes was the 145 pound champ for a long time. Now we have 9,033 left over per fighter. I'm going to go grab the Cuban at 9,300, Michel Pereira at 8,700, and now we have 9,100 left over. You can go grab yourself a Phillips, that's fine. I think a smarter bet than Phillips would probably be Maycee Barber at 8,800. You've got 300 salary left over. Here's your cash game lineup. All you need to do is show up in the top 50% of your contests. If you're new or if you don't pay attention, your cash games are your 50-50s, your head-to-heads, your double-ups, ways that you can build up that bankroll, protect yourself if you're allocating a lot to these tournaments, and really just an underrated way to play the game. So try to play those 50-50s, even if it's just $5, $10, $1. But now let's get into the fun lineups. Let's get into the tournament lineups for your single entries, for big contests. How do we win all the money this week? This is one of the easiest buttons you will ever click in the history of DraftKings. Robelis de Spain is somebody who you should be plugging into your lineups because he's going to knock this guy out probably in the first minute, so you get that extra quick win bonus of 25 points on top of the knockdown, which is 10 points, on top of the first round finish, which is 90 points. 125 point upside for the Cuban this week over Josh Parisian. Mateusz Gamrot at 9,400 is somebody I want to point to. I don't think you need to play him this week. He's getting a lot of takedowns, and I think that continues this week against RDA. RDA's been taken down a bunch, but he doesn't actually have a whole lot of significant strike upside in a 3-round fight. So I'm not too concerned with playing Gamrot at 9,400. At that point, I would just play Almeida. And I say play Almeida because he's got the wrestling, he's got the control, he's going to stay busy, and he's actually going to look for submissions. I think that he does whatever he wants against CJ Vergara this week. Even in a 3-round decision win, I think he could score north of 95 points, at least pay off that salary. Almeida, somebody who probably doesn't go that highly owned, so if you want to get a bit different, you can, but he is pricey. Benoit Saint-Denis will be popular. Sean O'Malley will be popular. Phillips won't be, and for good reason. I don't think that he scores that many points this week. If you want to get sneaky, you can play Maycee Barber. I think that Maycee Barber is somebody who can turn the slate on its head with her price, the matchup, being that it's women's MMA. She's coming in low owned. Why would somebody put 8,800 up for Maycee Barber when they could put 8,900 up for Benoit Saint-Denis, or they can get Michel Pereira? Even Della Maddalena is probably going to be somebody that people flock to more than Maycee Barber. So if you put her in there, you're getting a bit different. I like Michel Pereira this week as well. I think that grappling upside makes him very viable. He could come up with a submission win this week. Give me Cheeto, give me Dustin Poirier. It's a bit chalky when it comes to underdogs, but I think that these two kind of offset that. And now you've got 8,900 left over, so you got a big range to play in here. I talked about the importance of getting that middle range right. So let's say we went with somebody like Jailton Almeida. You left 700 salary on the table. I'm fine with that. Now, a lot of the rationale behind building these lineups is based on what our projections tell us, and you can get the projections, all of that, at KUNATH'SMMA.com. Linked in the description and in a pinned comment is KUNATH'SMMA.com. You can click plans and you can grab yourself a lineup optimizer for just $5.99. That's going to come preloaded with the projections. And I was out of town last week. I tried to do it on my phone. The projections didn't come up, but I'm back in town. The projections are already loaded into that. Everything's already going to be up by the time you watch this, but you can get all of that in your lineup optimizer. optimizer. So when I talk about setting your exposure, being overweight, underweight, things like that, that'll be all things that you could do with the rules in the lineup optimizer. If you want the lineup optimizer and everything else, you can grab Total Access. That's $24.99. That comes with the official betting article, the DraftKings strategy guide, the data model, as well as the lineup optimizer with its projections and access to the community forum, which is going to continue to grow during the weeks, months, and years that we run this. Again, all of that can be found at KUNATH'SMMA.com, linked in the description and at a pinned comment. Let's build some more lineups. Now let's tinker with some more combinations. Let's say you went with Dustin. Let's say you went with Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm fine with it if you want to play him. Let's go with Curtis Blaydes at 8,200. I might plug in Gilbert Burns into this lineup. 8,000 salary left over. Felipe Lins, obviously, for that sneaky upside that we talked about before. And now you come down here and you can grab pretty much anybody who's an underdog, that is. So let's kind of go through this and see what works best. Well, obviously Almeida doesn't work since we have Blaydes. You could play Yadong if you wanted. I think he's a bit chalky, maybe over-owned for what that production's going to look like. I'm not huge on MVP this week. Lord Michal's always got that knockout in his back pocket, but I think Pereira just gives him all kinds of trouble on the mat. Definitely no Chuk this week. You can't really grab Dustin Poirier in this lineup because you have BSD. So that really leaves you with this range here, and I think that your options are Jojo Wood, or if you want that 5-round upside, you can grab Cheeto. I feel like if you're already at this point, you might as well grab Cheeto because you've already got Lins bringing down that ownership a bit. But if you want to get really funky and different, you can grab Jojo Wood. You left 1,000 salary on the table. Nothing wrong with that. Now let's try to use the expensive guys to see what that looks like. So if we went Almeida, if we went Dustin, we've got 7,800 left over per fighter. Of course, we can squeeze in some of these lower priced value plays. Give me Jojo Wood, give me Dustin Poirier. I'm going to come up here to Jailton Almeida at 8,000, 8,700 left over. I'll come right up here to Michel. Totally cool with this. You didn't leave any salary on the table, but I think you got different enough with this combination up here and fading the main event. Now I'll start building another lineup here while we talk about fading the main event. There is merit to that thinking, in my opinion. Let's not put Dustin in this one. We had him in the other ones. Let's come down here. My thinking with fading the main event is if you really think that Sean O'Malley's going to win, then you probably don't play the main event if you're not willing to put Cheeto in there. You either put Cheeto in there or you don't play the main event, in my opinion. And the reason that I say that is because you're looking at a situation where Marlon Vera wins, it's going to be inside the distance. If Sean O'Malley wins, he could score a decent amount of points with his volume, kind of like the Chris Moutinho fight. But chances are he's going to take his time, he's going to take it slow, and he's going to outpoint Cheeto to a decision win. So all the way up here at 9,200 and at high ownership, you're going to need like 105 DraftKings points, in my opinion, to make it worth it. And who knows, he might fall apart after the third round. We've never seen him beyond that point. So don't be shocked if Sean O'Malley wins the fight by winning the first 3 rounds, getting his ass kicked for the last 2 but surviving it, and then he doesn't show up on the optimal lineup despite winning the fight. Now we've got 9,400 left over. You could fill this out with anybody who's not on the other side of these lineups. Pretty simple. But it's fun. You have 14 fights, a lot of close fights this week, a lot of different ways that you can approach this slate. Don't be afraid to get different. Don't be afraid to get weird. This could be the time where you do something completely different than what you're used to. And I've had people tell me time and time again, I decided to go against what I initially thought, and it worked out for me. So you might want to Costanza yourself a little bit. So we'll wrap up with Underdog Fantasy. I've got the slip preloaded for you guys. I'm going to explain each of these entries for you. Now, obviously, we are partnered with Underdog Fantasy, so if you use promo code KUNATH or you hit the link in the description, they're going to match your first deposit up to $100. So here's what you could do. Say you only did $10 and they gave you $10 back. Well, you can put $10 on this slip right here, and if it hits for you, it's actually going to pay out 1,000 because it's at a times 100 multiplier, because they've added these new things in there, like the 2 times higher, the 3 times higher. You see that up here with Maycee Barber, down here with Michel Pereira. Anything with this little pepper next to it is a multiplier of sorts, and that's cool. That's a feature that they didn't always have. But because of that, you can build these slips that give you bigger and bigger payouts if they hit. So here's what I'm thinking. Maycee Barber times 2, because you got the little pepper there for the finish, I think is super sneaky. She just brutalized Amanda Hebos last time out, and I think she could do the same thing to Katlyn Chookagian, who's obviously, with respect, very distracted, very detached from the sport, a lot older, and somebody who's not nearly as fast, as strong, as physical, as aggressive as Maycee Barber. I think that Maycee Barber puts it on her because she's just going to stand right in front of her. Now for Gamrot, we got higher than 4 takedowns. That's because we project him for 5. So we're going based off the projections here. I haven't projected for 5 takedowns, which is why I take the higher there. The same could be said for Phillips. His takedown line is at 1.5 takedowns. I have him projected for 1 completed takedown against Pedro Munhoz, who has historically very good takedown defense. And Phillips may just want to play that game around the outside, so I will take the lower on that one. For Rebellis de Spain, I've got lower than 20.5 significant strikes. I have him projected for 10 significant strikes because I don't think the fight lasts very long. And then for Michel Pereira, they're giving us 3 times multiplier on the submission, and I think he leans on his grappling very heavily here. Michal Lexichuk sucks at grappling. Okay, I don't know what happened, but it wasn't letting me do it with all 5, so what we did was just took 4 of them. We took out the Rebellis de Strange 20 significant strikes. We've got Michel Pereira with the submission. We've got the finish for Barber. Lower than a takedown and a half for Phillips. Higher than 4 takedowns for Gamrot. Again, we use the projections to be able to build these slips. That's what we're going to do on the channel moving forward, is use the exact projection, mirror that with the slip, and we'll see how it works for Underdog Fantasy. Again, they will match your first deposit up to $100 with promo code KUNATH, that's KUNATH, or by using the link in the description and in a pinned comment. But if you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, play the $1 winner take all contest that's going to be in the comments as well, and I will see you next week. Let's go.